Welcome back, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. My name is Nathan King. Hope everybody is having a great week. You are probably listening to this one on Friday morning because we are recording this on Thursday evening. We all just got finished, obviously, at SEC Media Days for the, upteenth year in a row. Auburn goes on the final day of Media Days. Jason and Mark, how long? This is like 8 or 9 years in a row. I don't understand the tradition of them. I'm not complaining. It's not a terrible fit, but
somebody asked us about that today, and me and Mark were talking about it. I don't know. It's as many years as I can remember, Mark. It's been on the last day, don't you think?
Yeah, it's been a while. I remember Auburn being the middle of the week one time, but since they've gone to 4 days, it's generally been Thursday.
Well, anyway, for some reason that works out that way. But obviously, now Media Days is all wrapped up. You're probably keeping track of it over the course of the week, or you weren't, which is also perfectly acceptable. And you just tuned in for Auburn's time, which is pretty much what we did. So we were in there in Atlanta today. Obviously, all of us drove back just a few hours ago. So wanted to recap what was. I thought personally, I try not to look too negatively. Some people are pretty jaded toward Media Days. I try not to look too negatively at it, and I actually thought this was a pretty good day for Auburn in terms of the impression of their head coach, the way Harsin came out. Thought he did a great job. Thought he did better than last year, that's for sure. And then the stuff that the players were able to touch on, I thought was pretty productive. I thought overall, it's mostly a pointless day, but you look for what you can get, and I thought Auburn overall did a really good job. So we'll get into it and recap Auburn's time in the spotlight. Obviously, we're joined here, Christian Clemente, our recruiting reporter, and Jason Caldwell and Mark Murphy here as well. So we'll start with Christian because this is your first rodeo, quite literally. You have never experienced the spectacle of SEC Media Days before this week. So before we get into the details of Auburn's time, just overall your impressions. You and I were there for about a day and a half, got there like midday Wednesday, talked some Florida, talk to some Kentucky people. Just your impressions of what is just one of the weirdest things in sports, but also one of the most fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good experience. Just kind of be there, like last night we talked with some of the Florida 24/7 guys, some of the Tennessee 24/7 guys. So it's kind of fun to be able to see different people that you either know from other schools or people that you might be associated with that, you've talked to on Twitter, but you haven't seen in person. And then, talking with the players, like Ventrell Miller yesterday with the crazy pants and stuff like that. So it's just kind of a fun experience. Don't take it too seriously, kind of, be there to have fun, get some stories out of it, but don't take it too serious and you'll probably have fun.
Yeah, that's what I think. And you and I are already talking about the plans for next year to post up all week in Nashville with our Hawaiian shirts and our Crocs, just because, this was the year that kind of did it for me, where I was like, you should really just kind of take this thing for what it is. And if you go in trying to have a good time, you probably will. So like I referenced, Jason, pretty eventful day for Auburn. I thought it was a productive morning session. For some transparency with our listeners, it's pretty standard. We get like a morning meeting with Harsin or whoever the head coach is, obviously over time. That way we can talk about like local stuff related to the team, because when he gets on the stage, it's going to be more, national stuff. People have the opportunity to be like, what do you think of Arkansas this year? Just because everyone's gathered together. So that was a really good session there at the beginning. Jason, is the first thing that you wrote about, and so we'll get to it immediately because our first comment on Facebook today is who's going to be the quarterback for Auburn. But a little bit of the game plan, the blueprint for fall camp at quarterback coming together, and we heard a little bit more about Zach Calzada. But we're just getting more and more context on this quarterback battle until it kicks off in earnest at the beginning of fall camp, which we found out today is going to be August 5th.
Yeah. First, if you're planning on wearing Hawaiian shirts and Crocs to an SEC Media Days, you better be running in place all day because it's about 50 degrees in the room that we get to stay in all the time. So it would be a little chilly.
That's the point. We're going for the shock factor with our purple.
Yeah, it would work. That's for sure. Obviously quarterback race is something we talked about a good bit. Bryan Harsin, talked about it, when we were able to sit down with him a good bit, but it's something that will be decided throughout preseason camp. You listen to Bryan Harsin talk about it. You got to feel like that, even though TJ Finley is a guy that got the number one reps in the spring, started some games last year, you just got to feel like it's almost Zach Calzada's job to lose at the moment. That's just the feel of it anyway. May not be true. It's still going to be a battle, but I think you feel like he's going to have every opportunity to win this job. I think that's why he came. He started 10 games last year at Texas A&M. You can hear it when guys talk about him. He's one of the first guys they bring up. And so I think he's made a big impression throughout the summer after kind of getting cleared to cut it loose. He threw in the spring, but with that harness on that left shoulder. Now he's kind of cutting it loose, been good. And so I right now, I would say the odds-on favorite would be Zach Calzada, but you got to go win a job. It's not like it's been the last 2 years where you had a returning guy in place and you had quarterback competitions. You always felt like somebody's got to do something really special to beat Bo Nix out. This one, you feel like Zach Calzada go out and perform. It's probably him, but the door's open for one of those other guys to go take it. And that's the thing about this. I would say, other than probably a half a dozen guys on this team, not maybe a few more than that, maybe 8 or 9 guys, there are going to be a lot of competitions in this preseason practice when you start thinking about the entire wide receiver group and talking about all the guys there, some of those positions in the secondary, the other linebacker spot. I mean, there's going to be some openings on this, and heck, even on the offensive line, they got so many guys back with experience. But yeah, I would say Calzada at the moment.
Mark, it was a good trio of players today. I thought all 3 guys made a lot of sense. You've got your 6th-year tight end, the record-breaking guy, and John Samuel Shanker has been a great representative of the university for quite some time. Probably the best player on the team in Tank Bigsby, and then a guy in Derrick Hall who's one of the best players on your team, 3rd in the SEC in sacks, and another guy who's a big kind of vocal off-season leader for the team. Just kind of your takeaways from those guys. We've seen over the past few years, lots of eclectic groups of players that Auburn brings to media days, and it's interesting to see how each of them performs, up in front of quite literally the bright lights and a lot of questions. And this year for them is a lot of maybe some uncomfortable questions. You had them asking, of course, about Harsin's inquiry, which we'll get to here in a minute, and then Tank Bigsby had to field questions about the transfer portal, which of course he didn't actually enter, but in the spring he kind of confirmed that he sort of flirted with that process. Just how you think those guys did, and it seemed like they were pretty ready to go ahead and get the pads on here in a couple weeks and finally get this thing rolling.
Yeah, the Tank Bigsby is the youngest of the bunch, and he probably had the longest distance to travel to be comfortable in this type of situation, because when he was in high school and when he was a freshman, I think he was a little bit nervous about all the interviews and that type of stuff. But I thought he was really good today, guys, and thought he had a lot of good things to say. I think he's definitely matured. I think he's ready to have a really good season. I think he knows it too. So I think the only thing that's going to prevent that from happening is an injury. So you'd hate to see that, but he might end up being the best running back in the Southeastern Conference this year. And then Derrick Hall, he was good as a freshman. He was already mature and polished when he got to Auburn as a freshman. He was a great kid down at Gulfport, Mississippi High School. He was the Ferris Bueller of that high school. Everybody loved him down there. And if you doubt it, go down there and ask them. They will tell you, and they'll say, don't say anything bad about our guy. We love Derrick. And, I thought he was exceptional today. And John Samuel Shanker, gosh, he's been committed to Auburn for it was about 14 years ago, I think, when he committed in baseball. And,
Christian had just turned 2.
Yeah, as a 6-year senior, he's played baseball and done interviews over in that sport and football. I was expecting him to be great in this role at media days representing the university. He really was. And last but not least, I thought the head coach was much better than he was a year ago at this time. I didn't hear any illustrating out there like he had been prone to do last season. When he didn't really want to answer something, he would talk and talk and talk like a senator from the 1960s and try to evade the actual subject. And I thought he was right to the point. I thought he was upbeat. I thought he was excited about his players. And after listening to all those guys, all 4 months, I was ready to go suit up and go through 2-a-days. So I thought it was about as good as an Auburn group has been in a while at SEC Media Days.
Yeah, an upset today, I think. Let's see if I can get his Twitter. Yeah, Alan Cole covers South Carolina. Apparently, he does this every year. He compiles the word count of the opening statement for each coach. You guys, Bryan Harsin was the 5th fewest, which our buddy Bennett. That's a big difference. Clark Lee, the runaway winner, 2,340 words. Bryan Harsin was under 1,000, 886 words. He went over 2,000 last year.
There was no chance of challenging the fewest for this year, though.
No, Mike Leach was
7.
I'm trying to remember exactly what those were.
7.
Okay, guys.
It's something like I don't like opening statements.
Yeah,
don't like opening statements. Any questions? If that's the combination there, we've got 7. But Mark, I wanted to touch on something you were talking about with Tank Bigsby. Obviously, opportunity to be the best player on the team this season. But the praise for him today from Bryan Harsin was that he might be the most improved player in the offseason. And that's a pretty scary statement, I think, for some SEC defenses they might play this year. I asked John Samuel Shanker about that. Said, look, guy's already a 1,000-yard rusher. He's going to be the focal point of your offense. How did he improve this offseason? But like Bryan Harsin talked about, it took the form of leadership. It took the form of preparation. And I think, both and working with Zach Calzada is something he talked about a lot too. I think all of those notes that we heard about Tank Bigsby are pretty important, especially considering what he went through, where seemed like he flirted with the transfer process. And then also I think is really important at the start of the season, breaking in a new quarterback, you need that confidence in your running game. So, Mark, as we continue to hear about this team being run first, sort of all the right things that we heard today about Tank Bigsby. Apparently, he might be the first team All-SEC running back tomorrow in the preseason poll, and apparently, he's on a good track to be even better this season.
Yeah, I think he's got a chance to be a little bit quicker than we've seen him. He's played through some injuries that have limited his quickness. I think he's probably the strongest he's ever been because he's been diligent about his off-season workouts. And then you got 2 years of experience in your belt in the SEC with all those really good defenses. And, I think for him to take the next giant step forward, guys, as a running back, he needs that vision thing. He needs to make sure he's hitting the right holes at the right time. Sometimes you just don't need to go barreling in there. And sometimes you need to hesitate a little bit and wait for the blocking to develop. And sometimes you need to just go ahead and attack it, depending on the defense, how they're lined up, and how your offensive line is handling guys. And another thing I expect to see out of Bigsby this year is I think he's going to be a little bit more of a factor in the passing game. And, you got a new quarterback in there. One of the safest throws is short passes to your tailback.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that Harsin touched on too, and I asked Tank about it a little bit, was just his preparation habits and him as a leader a little bit. I mean, he willingly admits he's not a talkative leader. He's not going to tell a guy like Jarquez or Damari Alston, hey, do this. He's going to do it and have them watch it. But he said he's really trying to focus on his preparation habits, be a little bit better off the field. So when it comes to Saturday, he can be counted on a little bit more and maybe know the playbook a little bit better, stuff like that. So I think that's kind of a key factor there as well.
Yeah, I think touching on something Mark mentioned, Tank, 21 receptions for 184 yards last year. And you think about with the tight end usage with wide receiver guys that are, coming on, you think about getting the ball in your best player's hands in space. And to me, that's where Tank excels, is in space, getting him outside where he is racing to the corner. And I think about, you're talking about, three touches a game in the passing game. That's 40 receptions for a year. Those 3 extra touches, you're talking about potentially 25 to 30-yard gain for an offense that has been missing those chunk yardage plays that you have to have. Sometimes if you're not getting them, in handing the ball off, that's a way to do it. So I think he's a guy, no question. You see him today. Mark mentioned it, having, known him since he was, junior in high school and seen him. The development part of things for him is that maturity level off the field. We saw it today in full force. And when you carry that over to a really talented guy, normally that's good results.
Yeah, sure. It's also cool to see. Obviously, you and Mark have been, seeing players for a long time develop, but not just on the field. That's what we always talk about. I remember me and Mark, I was at Rivals at the time. We were the only two people at the complex on a Sunday for some reason. It was Chris Thompson Jr. was on a visit from Texas, and Tank was there, and that was when he was a big South Carolina lean. Mark, I think I've told you this story before, but I just remember with every question, he was kind of like just subconsciously like moving his body away from us, and so the development stuff, also comes from a guy becoming, more comfortable in those kinds of settings. And look, NIL and all this kind of stuff that players are being asked to do these days, to put themselves out there and put themselves in front of a camera. It's no surprise that a guy like Tank, who had a lot of these NIL opportunities pop up, is becoming more comfortable with that. So yeah, I mean, all of the best stuff from him today. I think, an A+ performance, I say, in quotes, because that's where we are at this point in July. We're dissecting somebody behind a microphone. But Christian, obviously you came in with sort of your recruiting eye on the action today. I know you talked to Harsin about in that early session. So maybe some people who, obviously anybody who listened to this didn't hear that, because it was only us chatting with Harsin. Just what did you talk to him about in the morning? And then later on, he had some pretty good answers too about how they're kind of combating negative recruiting. So from your perspective, the way, your mindset that you came into today, what did you kind of take away from him in terms of, what he's thinking about, the way they're kind of going on the recruiting trail right now and what they might do to fix some things?
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of took away what we've all been suspecting, in the sense that, they're kind of stuck where they're at until the season starts, and they need to go out there and show it on the field in order to kind of turn things around with this recruiting class. And he kind of hinted at that a little bit, in the sense that, there's, once you get out on the field, once you get out in the arena, as he called it, there's a chance to even the playing field a little bit, and kind of combat some of this negative recruiting. And he said his message to recruits would just be, watch, see what happens this fall. And that's kind of what we've said a little bit. If Auburn is able to string together some wins this fall, maybe they are able to get some flips, get some guys that are maybe a little more on the fence still. So that's kind of what he talked about a little bit. And then Harsin was also very quick to point out the hire of Drew Fabianach, as well as the GM and director of scouting and development as well, noting how not only will he be helpful kind of for the classes and whatnot, but he also really touched on how, for guys currently on the team or guys that will be on the team, how important that is. He hinted at a guy like, maybe a sophomore or something like that, Fabianach can give him some advice in terms of, what do you need to work on in order to get to the NFL, because he does have that 18 years of experience. So he can help the team out a little bit. This has been a staff that has prided themselves and sold themselves to recruits as a staff that likes to develop players. You may be a 3-star, you might be a lower 4-star, but you're going to come in and we're going to develop you. And Fabianach is kind of another step in that sense, and kind of helping players get to the NFL.
Yeah, and there was also, in terms of the 2022 class, Christian, little bit of a news nugget today, something that we've been, chatting about on our boards for a while, but some good news in terms of a guy they're getting for the defense this preseason.
Yeah, Keontae Scott, and we've been reporting that for a little bit now, since like back in June. He just had to finish up some academics there at JUCO, but now he should be all good. And Harsin said July 28th, July 29th, somewhere in there. So you should get a little bit more depth into that cornerback room. I think that's pretty needed, because you felt good about the two guys you had at the top in Jalen Simpson and Nehemiah Pritchett. You felt pretty solid about DJ James as the third guy, but then from there, you had a lot of underclassmen. I mean, you had A.D. Diamond, you had Austin Osbury, you had J.D. Rim, and J.D. Rim was a guy specifically in the spring who did kind of step up, but you'd like to have someone more than just a true freshman there at the 4th spot. So now you have a guy who will come in. He'll be a little behind. He'll have to use fall camp. He'll have to be really smart about it and really kind of catch up a little bit. But he has JUCO experience to make up for that a little bit.
Hey, we have a perfect segue here, by the way. This was the next thing I was going to talk about to Jason. We have a YouTube comment that says, hey, Nathan, can you ask the guys who they want to see start at wide receiver besides Shedrick Jackson? Jason, I was going to go to you. In Harsin's time at Auburn so far, it's just not really been his style with us to single out one guy. We kind of joke about it sometimes, but as one guy, everybody's doing a good job. He doesn't necessarily think that, the focus should be on one person, most of the time. But today it was a lot of unprompted praise from him, particularly in that early session for Coy Moore, the LSU transfer. Said the very first day they had him on the player run practices, took a little inside slant, went all the way for a touchdown. And then just later praise, later on the day from Tank Bigsby. And, John Samuel Shanker told me when I asked him, he said he's a real wide receiver. He's somebody who's going to be able to come in and help from day one. There are also some interesting comments made about the rest of the receiving core. And most of all, it's what you mentioned a minute ago, Jason. They need more chunk plays in the passing game. They're number 11 last season in chunk passing plays of 30 yards or more. You can hear it in Harsin's voice when he talks about explosive plays, guys that can catch hitches and go for a long way. He knows how key that is going to be, especially with, again, say it a million times, breaking in a new quarterback, giving him easier throws, and trusting his receivers to make plays. But Coy Moore might have been the most talked about guy on offense today besides Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, Mark, I don't remember, and it's different because of transfers. I don't remember a newcomer getting as much praise as Coy Moore did today. I don't know if there's anybody that stands out to you. I don't remember anybody getting as much as he got today. Do you?
Not offhand. I mean, I heard it from everybody, all the three of the players and the head coach. And like Nathan said, the head coach volunteered the information, which was pretty interesting, I thought.
It was. Yeah. But, the question was, who do we want to see start opposite Shed? It doesn't matter to me. I just think they got to find somebody that's a playmaker. So for us, I mean, I want to see anybody step up and become that guy. And you're right. When people think about big plays in the passing game, they think about the 60-yard bomb. In reality, the big plays in the passing game more often come from a guy catching an 8-yard pass, breaking a tackle, or outrunning a guy and splitting a seam. Like we saw that, even though it was a backward pass early in that Mississippi State game, Javarius Johnson catching that little outside bubble and splitting two guys. You look at Alabama, you look at the difference in those guys. Yeah, they throw some balls over the top. The big plays for them the past few years, a lot of them have come from catching a slant from a slot guy in man coverage and outrunning a safety and taking it. That's what you've got to have, because you cannot count on every big play in the passing game being a ball that's thrown 50 yards in the air. Those aren't high percentage passes. There's a reason why it's not done that way. You'll see some guys do it. I mean, but you don't have many Aaron Rodgers guys back there, throwing those balls. You got to depend on the wide receivers to make some plays. That's the guy they got to have. And, obviously Coy Moore got a ton of talk. We heard some talk about Tavares Dawson, a guy we saw a little bit of in camp last year. We kind of expected it. He's now had a year to go, okay, what do I need to do? And I think he's gotten stronger, more physical. Heck, we got some Xavier Capers talk today. And that's really the first time we've heard him other than he needs to step up. We've heard that time and time again. Right. Well, we heard today that, hey, that guy's stepping up, and they don't have many like him. When you start talking about his length, his size, he's a different kind of guy. Camden Brown, freshman, Jay Fair. That's the thing about it. It's not a group devoid of numbers. It's just proven. Can somebody go prove it? Coy Moore looks like he's a guy that's going to have every opportunity for that chance.
And you guys haven't even mentioned yet the guy I think who might end up being the leading receiver among the wideouts, and that's Landon King. He's making the full-time move over to a wide receiver for tight end. He got 6'5", runs really great, runs excellent routes, will catch the ball in traffic, he can jump, and he has a history of playing wide out in high school out in Texas and putting up big numbers. So if I'm Landon King, I'm getting excited about this upcoming season.
Look, I was filling out my media ballot today, and he wasn't on the list in terms of being able to pick. You can only pick from the names that are given to you, but I was looking for him. I was trying to find him.
Yeah, this happened. We all glitched out. Y'all haven't known that Christian fully admitted Wednesday night that his favorite player in Auburn history might be Landon King. I just want to go ahead and I just want to make sure that's put on the record.
It's really going to be interesting to see how they mix him into this offense with the tight end group wanting to run the football. And can they find that slot kind of hybrid usage for him like we've seen, especially Georgia and Florida the last couple of years, really excel with? To me, that's the key for him is the matchup on a safety or matching him up with a nickel and using that size. Can they do those things? And that's one of the keys is getting guys in putting guys in position to make plays.
I just want to give a quick shout out to StreamYard, by the way, because I totally just dropped internet for a second, but we maintained. Christian didn't. Apparently, the other three of us did. I asked John Samuel. I think it was either him or like Luke Deal. One of them last year said that when JJ Pegues switched to D line, they had to boot him from the tight end group chat. So I asked him if they had done that yet for Landon. Now that he's listed on the roster as wide receiver. John Samuel said they're going to keep, he's going to keep, flexing into that, interior kind of spot, but he is technically in the receivers room with Ike Hilliard. And he said, no, I hadn't thought about that. Actually, he responded to something the other day, and now I'm thinking about maybe we should kick him out. So I was like, yeah, don't tell him that was necessarily my suggestion. But so if that happens to Landon, sorry about that. But Mark, another guy that we were talking about a lot today was Derrick Hall, of course. Haven't really mentioned him much yet. We have a question here about the linebackers outside of Owen Papo. Derrick talked a little bit about how good, how important Owen has been coming back. Didn't hear a ton, I would say, about the other guys at linebacker. Honestly, Owen is probably the most important piece there, because if he's not on his game, the rest of it is not necessarily going to work out. But the big thing with Derrick was, a couple points. Number one, a little bit of, I don't want to say news, but he admitted that after the Iron Bowl, he told his family he was declaring for the NFL draft. He said he was done. That was it. Just decided this was the time. He said he was ready to go to the NFL. Kind of, took a breather a little bit, sat down and decided to make the decision to come back to Auburn. And they really, really are grateful for that, Mark, because as you wrote today, just his leadership, that kind of perspective, making sure that, you wrote about the team vibes. He is definitely one of those guys that it was a pivotal, guy coming back for them in the offseason. And we got to see it really on full display today. He definitely is one of the top leaders this season. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy who becomes a team captain in the fall as well.
Yeah, I agree. And just a first-class kid who works hard. And, he was good as a true freshman, and but he got a lot better. He's gotten a lot better every season. And, if he keeps on his current pace, he was the first guy I put on my ballot at the defensive end spot for all SEC. And I think he's that good. And I think he's got a chance to play on Sundays for a long time. And, I think they're fortunate he decided not to go pro this year, because I think he'd be in a training camp next week with some NFL team that liked his potential. And, I think that I think he's going to have a really good year. He and Leota as pass rushers give Auburn a really good 1-2 punch in that area. And that's something Auburn needs to get a little bit more consistent and better at this year. And, it's also going to be interesting to see how aggressive Jeff Schmedding is in helping out that pass rush with corner blitzes or safety blitzes. And, the head coach had high praise for his new defensive coordinator. Sounded like a Hall of Famer almost at times talking about him. So, but I do think from talking to the players, not just at the media days, I think they've got a lot of respect for what Schmedding is going to do. And, I think the talent's there to have an improvement on defense. They just got to go out there, do it, and be consistent and stay healthy, because, there's only one Owen Papo on this team, as you mentioned, Nathan. And there's not a whole lot of Derrick Halls out there either. There's Colby Wooden and Derrick Hall, Iku Leota, and then you start thinking about stars on defense, and there's not a lot of them there right now. But there is some talent coming along, and it's got to be developed.
Yeah, you mentioned Leota. He was a guy in the spring that said him and Derrick, they combined 22 and a half TFLs last year. Is no small thing. Both of them were in the, top 8 in the SEC in that category. I think Leota was. But Derrick today said that, their relationship has really grown. They're kind of tied at the hip. Right now, they haven't been together forever. Leota's only been over here for a year from Northwestern, but maybe a slept-on pass rushing duo. We'll see how they do in the early season. That Penn State game will obviously be a huge litmus test, because you're talking about a great offense, the Big Ten offensive line, well recruited, all that kind of stuff. But two guys that did really well last year, sort of improved over the course of the season. I did want to, they say you never know what's going to happen on the stars come out on the Auburn Undercover podcast. And Miss Stacy, Derrick Hall's mom, just commented on our Facebook. She said, I wanted that degree, but I will note for you that that was the first thing Derrick said. He said, first and foremost, got to get that degree. So be proud of that. That was number one on the list of priorities for him today. Talking about coming back this year. Today at SEC Media Days. So
if I'm one of his parents, I'm a proud parent because that's a good kid right there.
We do love Derrick, and we were excited to see him on the list of participants for Media Days because we knew he was going to be a great interview. And I asked him, the first thing I asked, I think his first question he got all day was, did you intend to match suits with Bryan Harsin? Because go look on Twitter if you haven't, but they have the exact, I don't know if it's the exact same, really, really, really similar. But he said they both shop at the Locker Room. I'm assuming that's in Auburn.
It is, yes.
Okay, I've never been. But he said they didn't talk ahead of time, and then they both suited up this morning, and they looked at each other like, well, didn't mean for this to happen, but at least we both look good. So, Jason, one more thing about Harsin, and then we'll get to a question we have here. We're talking about to Christian about the way Harsin was sort of addressing the problems in recruiting. He also, I think, did the best job he has so far of addressing the big, the elephant in the room, which good job to us, by the way. We're 31 minutes into the podcast and haven't mentioned that. That's because we cleared it in the spring. But this is a national thing. People from all over are going to come talk to him. And so it only made sense that we knew it was going to come up. We talked about it ahead of time. We knew the February thing was going to come up. But he not only approached it head on, but he sort of decided that this was it. He decided we will not be talking about it anymore. He ended it by saying, if you have any more questions, plenty has been written. Go ahead and Google it. I thought his approach to that was kind of golden. I really didn't see any flaws in it. I thought he had a good game plan. You have to come in and write that ahead of time. Make sure you know your approach. And honestly, he executed it pretty well.
Well, we've been talking about it for years. And coaches, not just Auburn coaches, have made mistakes of acting like something didn't happen when in reality, people are going to ask about it. Just go ahead and get it out there and start off with it. And he's done a good job of that, really, starting back even with the spring, whether it was coming out when we had him post practice talking about an injury or dealing with those things. I think he's done a good job of going, hey, here's the deal. And when we've been saying for years, you control your own message. He controlled his own message at SEC Media Days. He said, here it is. Here's what I want to say about it. And hey, I think it's made us stronger. It's galvanized this team. And now let's move forward. And I thought it was a great way to handle it. Thought he did a good job with it. We all knew that somewhere along the line somebody else was going to ask about it again, and they did. Yep. But he responded and said, look, I said that, but look, we've moved past that. But we also understand that it's made us stronger. And you hear the players talk about it, the players we had today, and they've talked about it. Talked to other guys, other players that weren't at SEC Media Days, and every one of them said, look, there's just a different attitude. Now, we'll see what happens when you get on the field, but to do what they've done to this point is exactly what they had to do. You either divide and fall, or you come together and give yourself a chance. And, we'll see if this is one of those Auburn teams that does something that Auburn's known for. We've seen it many, many times over. When you look at Auburn and go, well, give up for dead. Here you go. This team has the pieces to go out there and go, okay, let's go surprise people. Now, it's going to take quarterback play and wide receiver play and staying healthy because of the lack of depth in some key spots. But top line, front line players, there's potential for this team to go out and surprise some people. And the one thing we know from an Auburn football team, saw it at the end of the year last year against Alabama, they're going to line up every game and go, hey, bring it on. This team's not going to be afraid of anybody. They're not going to go out there and go, oh, well, woe is us. That's just not how they're made. And because of that, you get a few breaks go your way. You're right there in it. But I think it starts with the attitude coming from up top throughout the players. And we heard that and saw that in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think it was John Samuel who said, we like to think that the 6-2 start is more of a representation of the 2020. That's the attitude right now is saying that, that obviously the injuries started to pile up, namely Bo Nix at the end of the season. Things kind of fell off the rails a little bit, but they're saying, look where we were before that happened. 6-2, they were top 15 in the playoff rankings. They had just beaten 2 straight ranked teams in their division, and so yeah, I mean, that was the prevailing thought from them today. I mean, there was a lot of good stuff from them too that we hadn't necessarily heard as many details before about them going and talking with the president, sort of putting together a little group and actually making the trip over there. John Samuel talked about different guys that were a part of that and different guys that were taking on different roles there. So I agree that it was handled the proper way. I kind of went in, I guess, sort of negatively on pessimistically on my part, thinking this is just going to be a drag. We're going to have to go through this whole thing again. All we want to talk about is the quarterbacks and the transfers, and like we want to get to the actual good stuff before fall camp starts. But again, I thought it was handled pretty decently from all sides there, players and Bryan Harsin included. Well, I guess I don't really. Looking here at the comments. Let's see here. We have record predictions. That's always a hot topic. I will say that we did of course, filled out the media ballots. Christian, I think you and I were talking. We both landed on. I didn't expect to land on this. I think we both landed on Auburn at 5th in the West, which maybe some votes like that will keep them out of last place. And I think the prevailing thought for both of us was Mississippi State scheduled too hard, and they're still Mississippi State. They lost to Memphis last year. LSU, and then LSU, too unpredictable, also a really hard schedule. And if you're going to look at both those teams as being kind of on the fringe there, maybe like 3-5 in the SEC, something like that, Auburn gets them in Jordan Hare. So if you're on the fence there, you're going to go with LSU. But I don't know about you. I was going through the schedule, and I did try to take a decent bit of time thinking that out. I was surprised to find myself putting Auburn at that spot in the division.
Yeah, I mean, I took about 0 time putting that together personally. But I don't know. I think 5th in the West seems about right. They could be higher than that if they get on a run, if they start the season 5-0. Don't know really what happens from there. Well, probably a loss to Georgia happens from there. But point being, the record could be better than we expect. So I think 5th in the West is a reasonable spot to put them at.
And it came up again. It keeps coming up about that 5-game stretch to start the season and how important that is. Everybody talked about it again today. Sorry, Jason.
Yeah, it's the thing for me is, something that me and Mark discussed on the way back from Atlanta, driving in a pouring down rain for about 45 minutes. As part of it is after Alabama, there's really everybody has some questions at some point. You look at Arkansas and you go, Arkansas, they got quarterback back, but like they lost some really important players on defense. When you think about a guy like Grant Morgan and some of the guys they lost on defense, and all I can think about is what I saw Auburn in Arkansas in person. Auburn dominated that football game in Fayetteville. Yep. So I think about, okay, are they going to be better than they were last year? I don't know that. Everybody dogged Chad Morris, and hey, he was terrible, his record. But what he did is he left some pretty good players at Arkansas, namely a few of those skill players on offense. And one of those guys is gone, Traylon Burks. And I think about the rest of the teams. Auburn, we talked about quarterback issues. Texas A&M's got quarterback issues. LSU's got quarterback issues. Ole Miss has quarterback issues. Mississippi State doesn't have quarterback issues, but you're right. I still don't trust them a whole lot. I think Mike Leach that's kind of what his motive has been for the most part. He's going to be 7-5, 8-4, somewhere like that, maybe. I don't know. It would be one, and then throw them up in a bag and see what happens after that. I honestly have no idea how this thing's going to turn out. But like I said, I think Auburn can be in the mix for most of these games, and if you break even somewhere in the mix, then you're probably 3rd or 4th in the West.
One of the things I normally do, and I did again this time at SEC Media Days, I talked to a lot of the writers and broadcasters wherever who cover other schools who've been doing this for a long time, and ask them about the teams they cover in detail. And I think the general theme was nobody's got a really good handle on who's going to finish where in the SEC, other than Georgia in the East should be number 1, and Alabama will be the heavy favorite in the West, because there's a lot of questions, like Jason said, everywhere. And there's 100 new players into the league, 100 plus in the transfer portal. A lot of guys have gone. A lot of really good recruiting classes coming in. You got the COVID exception year, so you got like Auburn. There's other schools with 6-year seniors, so it's just not a normal year. And I have no clue how the SEC West is going to finish. And I think everybody's got some questions. Even Alabama's got questions. Even Georgia's got questions in certain areas of their teams. So it should be a fun year for SEC football. I'm not absolutely convinced the league is as good as it is some years, but we'll see. And we usually get a pretty good feel by the end of September how good those teams are, just from the look test and how they do in some of the intersectional games.
Yeah, I think especially if A&M drops like a game or two, they should. I mean, they host Miami. It's something like that where it becomes clear that they're not going to be amazing at that point. Maybe in like mid-September. From that point, the West is going to be awesome because like everybody's been saying, like there's just no way to know. You could tell me Ole Miss finishes sixth. You could tell me they finish second. You could tell me Mississippi State bottoms out for some weird reason. You could tell me they go 10-2. Like I just there's the realms of possibilities are pretty endless this year, which is great. And kind of the same thing for the East, and maybe not as extensive, but like firecrackers like Tennessee could pop. Florida, the talent, they're like LSU, like the talent is there, but some roster differences, obviously, a new regime. So the closer we get, of course, and that's the point. Look at me getting reeled in by SEC Media Days. I mean, that's the point. You go to this, you get excited, talk to people, and you're excited for the season. But I think
what I do think about this is I don't know that it's as strong from 1 to 5, but what I do really believe is that from 5 to 13, this league is much better than it's been in the past. I think we've seen that the last couple of years. And Vandy, if you listen to Clark Lee, you'll be the best program in the country here in a few years. So they're getting better. I do think they've got some potential there to get better. But you look at the South Carolinas, you look at the Kentuckys, you look at Tennessee now with Josh Heupel and what they're doing. They're going to score points. You look at those teams, and then look at Arkansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. There's, I kind of compare it to SEC baseball 25 years ago. There's about 3 weekends where you went, man, we got a breather now. We can take this easy. We're going to win 2 out of 3. If we don't sweep, we're going to be mad. And that's the way football has been for a long time. It's not that way anymore. The Auburn, the LSUs of the world, Alabama and Georgia can still do that really because of talent for the most part. Everybody else in this league, you tee it up on a Saturday, and if you don't play well, you're probably going to get beat. That's a tough spot to be in. That makes it really difficult, and that's why we've seen a bunch of 6-6 and 7-5 the last couple of years, because that's how difficult it is, because the bottom is coming to the middle, and when that happens, it makes it tougher on you kind of have a bunch of jumbled up mess.
The 2 teams to me that are the biggest questions for me getting a handle on them are the 2 teams with the new head coaches, LSU in the West and Florida in the East. And, both those teams got talent, but, new assistant coaches, new head coaches, there should be some energy, but we'll wait and see. And I think each of those teams has got a lot of issues they got to overcome. But, I never worry too much about the Gators or the Bayou Bengals getting out-talented in a major way by teams. So I have no idea where each team is going to finish in the league.
Yeah, it's funny talking about Florida. Like Christian mentioned, we got to see some of our 24/7 colleagues and particularly a couple guys from the Florida site we hung out with on Wednesday night. And one of them was saying, every single coach over the past few seasons, obviously Florida has not, it's tough to get back to where Urban Meyer had them, of course, but that's where you want to be. Every coach has had, his vice, but like the other 8 out of 10 things are all really good. Like, I mean, just because of the position you're in. Same kind of thing at LSU. You can do. You don't have to necessarily be a perfect coach there just because of the resources you have. And that's why, me personally, I think that's why Brian Kelly might have them set up for success in the long run, because of what you looked at. He's done it his past few stops. Yeah, I mean, besides the teams, the player ballots was pretty fun this year as well. It started immediately at quarterback because Bryce Young, is the number 1. Although, Christian, I'm trying to remember, but apparently somebody did ask a Texas A&M player whether he thought Bryce Young was the best quarterback in the conference, and it's like he won the Heisman last season, maybe. But like, you go to number 2, you could make Christian, you and me, and Justin were sitting together, and each of us had a different number 2 quarterback. Justin had Stetson Bennett, which I can get behind his argument there. You had Levis, you said, right? And I went with KJ Jefferson, and it's like, yeah, but Spencer Rattler, you could make a case there. Hendon Hooker absolutely could make a case. And so I think, to Jason's point, where it seems like all these teams in the middle are capable of popping up to the top. So much of that is dependent on quarterback play, of course. And I think if an Arkansas, gets the people are like, oh, he's a dark horse Heisman guy. If you get that kind of season from him or Will Levis or Spencer Rattler, or Hendon Hooker, that's going to be the team that surprises and wins 10 or 11 games, I think.
Yeah, I went with Rattler as the number 2 guy. And I don't think that's a crazy pick at all.
No, not in the slightest.
Yeah, just think about Will Rogers as a freshman, for 4,739 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions.
That's pretty stout.
And obviously that's a system, but and I think that's the question about Mississippi State is this. I think it's the same thing about Auburn in a different way. Mississippi State doesn't run it at all. They're pretty much handing the ball off every play, but they had 0 big play threat last season. Can they add that to their repertoire? We've seen it. You can do all those things you want to, but it makes it really hard to score. And I think you look at Auburn and you look at teams like that, and you go, the touchdowns outside of 20 yards. You improve those numbers and start to compete with some of the bigger teams in the country in that stat, then you change the direction of a season in a hurry, and that's what Auburn's got to have in the end.
Yeah, and a guy like an Anthony Richardson too, probably not someone you should probably say in the preseason is the second team guy, but in terms of a ceiling, what we saw in flashes, absolutely could be a great player by the end of the season. And so I think all of this translates. The past 10 minutes have translated to we're all very excited around here. We have no idea, and we're just yes, we're very excited for the things to actually get kicked off. And so I think we'll wrap it up there, guys. That was a lot of fun talking, obviously, about Auburn's time in the limelight at the College Football Hall of Fame. Which great setup. I don't know y'all's opinions of it. I do like that setup a lot. I don't have a ton of experience, obviously, because it's my second. I think only 3 years in Birmingham, 2 years in Atlanta for me.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. It's too spread out.
It's very cold.
Yeah, it's cold. The Galleria is really cold when we're in Birmingham.
Frigid.
But everything is so close when you're at the Galleria and it right there. It makes it really easy to pop in and out. A little more spread out when you're in Atlanta. But it has a great look for TV and for video and all those people. And because of that, they'll continue to go back there for that very reason.
I will say I love the heavy rain coming in today.
It makes it hard to hear.
Yeah, because I think it was Sankey was saying how the roof is supposed to represent the Georgia Dome or something like that. And so you could hear the rain pretty well. You couldn't hear Josh Heupel very well, but you could hear the rain.
Yes.
Again, Sankey getting up there having to scream into the microphone. Yeah, I think I have my headphones in for Heupel, but yes, I guess everybody had to use their outside voices, as it were. Again, it'll be in Nashville next year. I guess that's kind of Sankey's like plan since he took over. I guess he's liking the thought of like deviating, giving everybody different, like, I guess, sort of sub-region type places the opportunity.
Just wait till it's in Oklahoma City, then there'll be a little bit of a travel. So
that's okay. That's a good. So me and Christian were talking about it. Like when Texas and OU join, it's going to make a lot of sense to put it out there. It'll
be in Dallas. We'll have it at the Star. Probably something like that. It won't be long.
Yeah. So next year in Nashville, prepare yourself.
The first year there were 2025. We'll be at the Star in Frisco. That's where we'll be. Go ahead and write it down.
Yeah, and then when it's 24 teams, we'll have to head to, like, I don't know, Tampa, Chicago, or something like that. Yeah. We'll head to Ontario at some point, but we're just along for the ride. Auburn Undercover takeover of Nashville in 2023
starts right now. That's it.
It starts right now. Christian said today we're going to start planning a year in advance to make sure we've got that covered. So
just wait until you get Dukes taking over Nashville.
That's absolutely cannot wait. Yeah, I said that it's going to be you and me setting up one all week, as we need that other chair open for Dukes, because he's liable to just grab Charles Barkley and bring him on the show. So it seems like a pretty valuable asset there. Well, we're at about 50 minutes, which is one of the longest shows we've done in a while. So we'll go and hit the wrap up button. Thank you guys so much for listening. Hope everybody appreciated this one and enjoyed this one. If you guys did, definitely go leave us a 5-star review. I know I say that every single episode, but maybe now I'll take a little more time to say that really, really does. That's what's going to push us up the categories on wherever you guys get your podcasts. It's going to introduce some new people to it if they happen to be looking for a new show that's Auburn related, SEC, football, college football, all that kind of stuff. You guys enjoy the show, send it to a friend or whatever, recommend it if they're asking for podcasts, all that kind of stuff, guys. We really, really do appreciate it. The intro and outro music is by Beats by Mordecai. If you like it, which I've been told some people do, check him out on Instagram, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And go head over to auburnundercover.com. We've got a ton of coverage. It was so much today. We just kind of overloaded everybody, but that's what we do. That's the point of media days. So in the days to follow, you guys will listen to this on Friday morning. We'll have a bunch more on Friday morning. Probably have stuff going into Saturday. Continue to react to it because, like we've talked about this entire episode, this was sort of our appetizer for the season. So we're ready for the main course, and it'll be coming on August 5th. So obviously very excited for that. So thank you guys so much for listening and watching on the live stream. Until the next time, we will catch you guys later. Everybody have a great weekend.